Next up, we have Allison Shapiro. She is Executive Director of Closed Loop Partners. They are a 120 million impact fund focused on the circular economy. Investments include venture capital, growth equity, and private equity. Some of the key investment areas include recycling and plastics waste. Allison is responsible for investment, vehicle structuring, capital formation, and strategic partnerships. She's been at Closed Loop about 1 year and was at JP Morgan prior to that. Go ahead, Allison.
Hi, Cooney. Thanks for inviting me to speak. One quick correction, we have 250 million under management. I'm not sure where the 120 came from.
My apologies.
No, that's okay. And we're about to announce a couple of other statistics that will bring that number higher shortly with some new corporate commitments. Here today to talk to you about the circular economy, high level, what we view as macroeconomic drivers for growth. The funds that we have, our innovation center, we're a little bit unique in that we have an innovation center, and also let you know if you're interested in investing in what funds are open for new investments. So as Cooney mentioned, Allison Shapiro, Executive Director at Closed Loop Partners. First, let me start with what is circular economy. And it's helpful to start with what is a linear economy. So generally speaking, around the world today, we consume products linearly. We consume them in a take, make, waste fashion in which natural resources are extracted, distributed, processed into new goods, consumed, and then typically landfilled or incinerated if they're disposed of, quote unquote, properly. If they're improperly disposed of, there's seepage into marine and land-based ecosystems. Obviously, many of us would prefer that materials that have economic value not be landfilled or incinerated and they be kept in play. That's the vision of a circular economy in which materials are recaptured, reprocessed, reconsumed ad infinitum for as long as the structural integrity of the materials comprising the product allows for. We at Closed Loop are exclusively circular economy investors. This is our 6th year in operation. We were started in 2014. We started with we started with one debt fund called the Closed Loop Infrastructure Fund, which was seeded by very large corporations in the retail and consumer packaged goods spaces, Walmart, Amazon, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Danone, et cetera, Starbucks. They're all still invested in our funds. We now have 6 funds. We have a second below market rate debt fund called the Closed Loop Beverage Fund. We have 2 early stage venture funds called Closed Loop Venture Fund 1 and 2. They invest beyond recycling. They invest in circular economy solutions across food and ag, apparel, robotics, electronics, software and logistics for resource recovery efficiently. We have one growth equity fund called the Closed Loop Fashion Fund, which is focused on innovations in the apparel industry. So think about advanced materials, transparency solutions, business models that encourage consumers to recover their clothing and send it back to be repurposed. And then we have a private equity fund that we launched last year that has made 2 investments called the Closed Loop Leadership Fund. In addition to these funds, on our asset management side, we have an innovation arm called the Center for the Circular Economy that primarily does 3 things and has its own dedicated staff. First is applied research, which we publish publicly to help policymakers, NGOs, and investors get a baseline data set and understanding of different circular economies for materials and format types to be comfortable actually making investments or designing systems that recover these materials better. The second thing that the center does is advisory services, predominantly to industry collaborations, but occasionally to individual corporates. And thirdly, and perhaps what we're best known for, is pre-competitive collaboration. So we currently have 2 projects in market to redesign common single-use plastic goods. One is the coffee cup, which you might pick up at a Starbucks or McDonald's. And in fact, they are the lead sponsors of the project. It's called the Next Gen Cup Challenge. We're at the end of year 2 of that challenge to source solutions, test them, pilot them. We funded the winners, and now we're in a testing and commercialization phase with them. That's called the Next Gen Cup Challenge. And a couple of months ago, we launched Beyond the Bag, which is an effort to redesign the single-use plastic bag that we all know and probably at this point are frustrated that we still need to use it in our kind of grocery and pharmacy pickup lives, sponsored by Target, Walmart, Kroger, and CVS Health, among others. So our purpose is to build circular economies. We do that predominantly through capital, secondarily through pre-competitive collaborations, 2 debt funds, 4 equity funds, as I mentioned. Just to give you some framing statistics on why we think this is such a compelling opportunity, and it's a global economic megatrend. Besides our own internal research, Accenture estimated in 2015 that the circular economy, which refers to the recovery and reuse of valuable materials, is worth $4.5 trillion in global economic growth by 2030. So we're not that far away from that point. Only 9% of natural resources actually make their way into products after first time use. So 91% are used once and then disposed of. And the 4 forces that I think are not hard to see anymore if you're paying attention to the headlines that are driving predominantly corporations to think about behavior change, but you should be able to see it at an individual level and to some degree in a government level around the world. 1, consumer demand for less packaging, demand for recycled content packaging, demand for cleaner packaging, and also climate-friendly solutions. 2, regulation. Never doubt the impact that regulatory threat has on corporate behavior. 3 would be resiliency of supply chains. We're seeing that a lot in COVID now. COVID has largely helped us, not hurt us, in being able to convey that the security of supply chains and material reuse and preservation of natural systems is incredibly important. And then finally, cost savings. So eventually we hope to be in a world where repurposing material is cheaper than extracting virgin. Maybe that will happen if we end up with a carbon price someday. Right now, recycled content is generally more expensive than virgin material, but that's the world we're building towards.
Great. Thanks, Allison. I guess we'll try a few questions here. So we have one from the audience on carbon capture and storage. Is that an area that Closed Loop would consider investing in?
It is. We're looking into it. Generally speaking, CCNS projects have very high CapEx costs. So we have to think about whether we are actually best suited to provide that capital, because predominantly our project finance activities are done in the format of debt, but our venture fund is looking into CCNS solutions.
Okay. And I guess when we go back to the topic of single-use plastics, I want to dig a little bit more into your theory of change. Where do you have the opportunity for largest impact? Is it more on the policy side, or really just through impact investing, just straight up impact investing and investing in innovative companies and solutions?
So we're not a kind of silver bullet kind of place. We think you need all of it. Most likely policy will get us farther, but innovation will get us faster to where we want to go. So absent national policies that encourage recycled content, recovery of material, cleaner materials, we need to look for market-based solutions and continue to attract investor capital into those solutions so that we can make them competitive in the market. But we are very much fans of supportive policy at CLP as well to help drive this change faster. Right.
Let's see. I know you guys just put out a white paper on circular economy. Any key takeaways from that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I think the one big takeaway and something that was really heartening to me when I joined is that a lot of the solutions exist, not all of them, but a lot of solutions exist to our supply chain challenges that would keep us from extracting more resources. They're underfunded and or not cost competitive. So we need to think about the set of policy solutions and also supportive capital to get them off the ground to allow them to compete. But we don't see lack of solutions as the primary barrier here. It's lack of supportive policy and lack of investment capital. And we are excited to be among the earliest entrants in this sector trying to move some of these companies forward, and municipal projects as a municipal lender as well.
Right. Okay. And apologies before on the AUM number. So for that 250, can you give us a sense as to the breakout there between debt and equity, and are all the funds basically targeting market rates of return?
Good question. It's a little more debt than equity for the time being. I think if you ask me this question in the year, it's going to be more equity based on the funds that are in market raising. And the letters of engagement we are working on documentation through right now, but Closed Loop started as a below market rate debt fund strategy with the Closed Loop Infrastructure Fund. So we now have 2 below market rate debt funds that are primarily impact first, but all of the equity funds are market rate. So 15 to 20% net IRR targets, hopefully more than 20% IRR in our venture strategies. And the funds that we're in market with right now are all equity funds. So Closed Loop Venture Fund 2 is open for new investment, Closed Loop Leadership Fund, PE, new investment, Closed Loop Fashion Fund, equity as well. So at the moment, it's probably 60-40 debt equity. But in a year from now, I think we're probably 70-30 equity debt.
Right. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Got another question here from the audience. It's, would Closed Loop consider development of a hydrogen feature of the circular economy in one of your investment opportunities?
Yeah, it sounds like we have some energy-minded and climate-minded people on the line, which is not surprising. It's not that we don't view these categories as helpful, and waste to energy is a huge investment category. Many firms are now investing in waste to energy and also increasingly carbon capture. We got started as a fund focused on keeping materials out of landfill and keeping valuable materials at play. Yes, greenhouse gases and non-greenhouse gases like carbon and hydrogen are waste gases and have recoverability opportunities in them. At the moment, we probably wouldn't consider like a hydrogen project in scope. CCNS could be in scope, particularly if it's related to like plastics production and capturing waste industrial gases, but both of them are kind of on the fringe of what we've set out to do. And there are many other funds that also consider them eligible categories. So we're trying to move the needle in the waste space.
Okay, let's see. Another audience question. Has Closed Loop been engaged in fund food system or upcycling solutions?
I love the question. So one of the founders of Closed Loop, Rob Kaplan, who has since left and has started his own fund platform called Circulate Capital, helped get Refed off the ground, which is a food waste nonprofit. A couple of years ago, we have a handful of food and ag investments in food spoilage detection and food waste anaerobic digestion in an industrial organics composter. It is a growing sector within our portfolio. We are actively sourcing pipeline, and you may see some more projects from us in the next year that are launched in collaboration with industry related to food waste detection, mitigation, and recovery. So stay tuned. I can't talk about them now, but I think you'll see some announcements with big industry partnerships in the next 12 months.
Okay. And one last question. I think we have about a minute. Would Closed Loop look at pyrolysis to keep waste out of landfills?
Oh, yes. So we are actively trying to uncover what is reality and what is fiction in this broader category of chemical recycling, of which pyrolysis is the most common set of technology for dealing with low value, hard to recycle plastics. We're going to release a whole bunch of research. It's our second phase of research publicly in phases starting December. And we have 3 chemical recycling investments actively right now. There will be others, and we've launched an advanced recycling innovator program, of which there are several pyrolysis companies in the pool. Google Closed Loop Advanced Recycling Innovator Program, you'll see who they are, but we are trying to help identify the best technologies on the market and demystify some life cycle assessment concerns about that class of recycling technology. So most definitely, we think it's going to have to be part of the solution for plastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Allison Shapiro.
Thank you.